How are we doing, Pre-Lit family? So today we are going to talk about, did Congress really create hindrance to the consumer's ability to get justice when they provided a limitation of liability against the credit bureaus for defamation, negligence, and invasion of privacy? I think not. I think if you understand how the FCRA was designed, this is actually a benefit. Before we get into that, for those of you guys who are joining us live, feel free to comment below and we will answer your questions as well. All right, so let's kind of jump into it. So, quick backstory. What is credit reporting? Credit reporting is the telling of a story about somebody. In very simple terms, that's what it is. If you tell a story about somebody, well, it better be truthful, because if not, what can happen? You can get your ass sued for things like negligence, defamation, and invasion of privacy, right? So credit reporting prior to FCRA pretty much just that. It was like the open Wild West. He said, she said. When you had a problem with your credit reporting prior to FCRA, good luck to you trying to get a copy of your credit report from the bureaus, because there was no FCRA requiring they give you a file disclosure. And additionally, good luck to you as well trying to figure out a report that actually caused your decline previously. And even further, good luck to you if you tried to dispute and correct that information. There was no FCRA process to help David and Goliath with that battle. So what happened was Congress said, okay, you know what, this is kind of a problem because we have these poor consumers and it's like a big giant black hole at these credit bureaus. You don't know what they're saying. And when you send them letters, they basically, it's kind of like how we deal with social media these days. You know what, if they decide to deplatform you, good luck with that, right? This is kind of how it was back in 50 years ago. If the credit bureau said something to you, I mean, how are you going to fight them? You got to lawyer your ass up is what you would have had to do. So Congress said, okay, we're going to force the credit bureaus to create a dispute process, which did not exist before. And we're going to require that they have reasonable procedures when they receive a dispute. And if they don't have reasonable procedures when investigating the dispute, they can then under the FCRA for not investigating, but in forcing the bureaus to have this dispute process that they have to put in place. Congress said, we're going to give credit bureaus a little bit of leeway, although they're supposed to report maximum possible information. Consumers cannot sue them for defamation, negligence, or invasion of privacy unless they made that information with malice or willful intent to injure. In exchange for that, Congress did create two provisions in the FCRA, 1681N and 1681O, where the consumer, though, can, under the FCRA, so not using negligence, not using defamation, not using invasion of privacy, or any of the common law type remedies, instead they created 1681N and O, which is the consumer can now, under the FCRA itself, hold the credit bureaus liable for negligent or willful noncompliance. So what this means is when you bureaus, your disputes to the bureaus, they now have a duty to have reasonable procedures to reasonably, if you believe that investigation failed, which indicative sign of that would be the data is still jacked up. But if you believe that their investigation failed, that is actually what you're going to really have to hold them liable for. All right, we'll see. We got some Facebook users here coming in. Let's see, what do we have? Let me refresh over here. Okay, 1681N and O. Let me refresh over here, see who this is, because StreamYard does not. Charlicia, yes, Charlicia. 1681N and 1681O are the provisions of the FCRA for consumer remedies. Warren Maxwell, what is up? Okay, cool. So let's do a quick screen share and take a look at this, kind of what we're talking about. So, all right, share screen. Give me a second here, guys. All right, Okay, so now we can take a look here of the FCRA, kind of where this limitation of liability is that we're talking about. Okay, so 1681H E, if we go to the bottom, is where this limitation is carved out, and this is where you can really kind of see how you are supposed to work the right. This is really where that give take is. The consumers were given the ability to have a dispute process, but they lost the ability to sue for certain defamation things. So let's take a look here. So what this is saying is that except as provided under 1681 N and O, which these are what Congress created in the FCRA, the provisions for holding the bureaus accountable for negligent and willful noncompliance. Okay, so this is now a statutory remedy. So except for the remedies that Congress created in the FCRA, the consumer may bring any action proceeding in the nature of, okay, so defamation. So if you're like, these credit bureaus defamed me, well, too bad, so sad. These credit bureaus invaded my privacy, again, too bad, so sad. And finally, these credit bureaus were negligent. Well, too bad as well. Okay, so you cannot hold them liable for any of these three typical issues with respect to reporting of information against any consumer reporting agency or any user. So the users would be like the car dealerships, the mortgage brokerage, the credit card company, or any furnisher. So basically, it provided this limitation of liability on credit bureaus, on users, and on furnishers. But this is for information disclosed only under these three sections of the FCRA, 1681G, H, or M. Okay, M has to do with users. So this basically any information disclosed in a consumer report to a user falls under this limitation. And disclosures to the consumer as well. Like if you get your full credit report, that's also covered. So under the majority of the situations that we are dealing with our typical consumers as credit repairers companies, or if you're an FCRA attorney watching this, most of those scenarios fall under information that is provided under one of these three sections. Your standard consumer report is issued under here. Okay. So also, if there was adverse action taken, okay, if there was adverse action, so again, you got to have damages. So like they may have said something negligent or defamatory and you may have been declined because of that. You still can't hold them liable for defamation, invasion of privacy, or negligence, except unless you can prove that that negligent, invasive, or defamatory information was actually produced, was false, not just inaccurate, but was false, and was furnished with malice or willful intent to injure. Okay, so I mean, that's a pretty high standard that you have to achieve, right? You have to prove that they were actually trying to injure you. And this is all okay. I will take this limitation of liability any day of the week. I don't need to, worry about negligence, defamation, invasion of privacy if I understand how to work the FCRA, right? Because your 1681 N and O are powerful remedies if you work the dispute process correctly. And so what I'm really trying to say is dispute process, so many people focus on, well, this is inaccurate, prove it or remove it, your stuff is wrong. Well, that's great. You can put them on notice of what's wrong, but have you provided them sufficient information to conduct a reasonable investigation? Because at the end of the day, if you just send them a letter with really nothing really substantial, even if the data is still wrong, you've got to be able to prove that their investigation was unreasonable, because you're not going to be able to hold them accountable for just reporting inaccurate information. It has to be false information with malice or willful intent to injure. So what I would recommend is when you are sending your disputes to the credit bureaus, it's always a good idea to put a copy of their own credit report with your dispute. And of course, if you can identify the errors, basing it against something like their own industry standard, like Metro 2, where it's really irrefutable that what they're saying is wrong. If you send all of that, a well-documented dispute to the credit bureaus, they're now in a much different position than if you had just sent just a generic letter to these folks saying, prove it or remove it, or I just don't like what you're telling me. So the takeaway here is the dispute mechanism, the consumer dispute process is really a very powerful mechanism that was created by Congress, but most people don't fully utilize the power of that because they're just trying to claim credit, right? They don't really understand that it's actually up to the consumer or the consumer's representative, right? If we're a CRO or if you're an attorney, to put the bureaus on notice with enough sufficient information, right? I mean, that's not spelled out in law, but it is spelled out that they're supposed to conduct a reasonable investigation with the information that the consumer sent to them. Okay, so if you send them a sufficient dispute, actually showing them errors and giving them reasonable information, reasonable for the dispute, enough information, if you then open up the ability to hold them accountable for reporting inaccurate and wrong because they failed to conduct the reasonable investigation. Really, what you're going to hold accountable for is not conducting a reasonable investigation. That is really the takeaway here. That is the power that Congress gave to the consumers, is to hold them accountable for not conducting a reasonable investigation. So as professionals watching this video, I mean, if you're a consumer, definitely go to work and put good disputes. But as a professional, if you're a credit repair organization or even an attorney, what do we need to do to help our clients to where the disputes are ironclad, right? And that starts with us doing a good job, doing a good investigation of the information and putting them on notice. So that being said, hopefully this helps you guys to now understand kind of a little bit more how Congress created that give take. They gave the consumer the most powerful weapon out there, which is the ability to hold the bureaus accountable for not conducting a reasonable investigation. Because prior to that, if you sent some sort of a dispute letter to the credit bureaus, there was no statutory mechanism to hold them accountable for. They could have literally thrown it in a garbage can. And what are you going to sue them for? Throwing your letter in the garbage can? I don't think that that was really practical at the time. So let's go ahead and think about that. Let's kind of reconsider the power that we have. It starts with us putting good disputes together. If we put them on notice with good disputes, then the full power of the FCRA becomes available to help the consumers. That being said, appreciate you guys for watching. If you want more information about how I can help you as a CRO, go to creditrepairtrainingcourse.com. Take a look at what we have there. And I will see all of you on the next video. You guys be good.